I have a echo, so if you can please switch off your microphone, it would be just great. Oh, thank you very much. So hello everybody. So I will present you what I've done during my thesis from 2005 to 2008 with the University of Manchester. I was working with EDF and the university, and my supervisor was Daniel Kirschen. Um, it seems to me that you are quite familiar with ancillary services, so I will try to go fast on the introductions. So first, first of all, why do we need to control frequency and voltages? That for three main reasons. First is about security of supply. So, for instance, to avoid load sheddings. It's for quality. To we will try to not to have a good efficiency and good behavior of the equipment connected to the network, and we also want that to our equipment to be safe. So we will try to have over voltages and over speeds, which can be dreadful for equipment. Um, so here is an example of the frequency of the UCT systems, so the continental Europe. As you can see, um, it exhibits strong variations and in over time. So here is time and here is the frequency. As you can see, the target frequency of the UCT is 50 Hertz, and if you lose 1,300 megawatts, it can drop by 50 millihertz. So why is the frequency is moving over time? It's very easy. Um, the frequency just shows the balance between consumptions and productions. So if the consumptions increase, obviously not obviously, but the frequency will start to drop, and at the reverse, if the productions is greater than the consumptions, the frequency will increase. So in order to control frequency, we just have to adjust in real time the productions and consumption. So next, about voltage. Voltage is different from frequency because voltage is local, whereas frequency is global. The frequency is shared by all the systems, whereas the voltage will depend on the node of the network. And here is an example of the French Guiana in South America. And as you can see on this scheme, that the frequency will change for different nodes. And very similarly to frequency, we can control the voltage by controlling the generations and consumptions of reactive power at the different nodes of the network. So here, for instance, we can see that the voltage will vary all along this feeder as a functions of the generations and consumptions of the of reactive power. Well, so therefore we have to to control frequency and voltages, and to do that, there are different means which are available in the systems. So the main device which is able to control frequency and voltage are generating units. Then we can have loads through demand side management and network assets, and we can have also purpose-built devices such as capacitor banks or FACS. And all these devices will provide frequency and voltage control service, and these services are called ancillary services. They are ancillary because they are ancillary to the consumptions or generations of electrical energy, which is a principal service that we can have in an electrical network. So this scheme represents, in a nutshell, the framework of the issue of ancillary services. So we have some users which are providing frequency and voltage control by the real-time adaptations of active and reactive powers. So these services are private goods. They are owned by the users which provide the services. And with the help of these services, we have a frequency and voltages within boundaries. And this good quality of supplies will be beneficial to everybody, to all the users of the system. As the system services are shared by have the benefits for everybody, they are public goods, which has some particularities in economics. Okay, so my thesis was just about the issue of ancillary and system services uh, in a liberalized electrical system. And we just try to explain the issue and try to have some insight on some points, especially in the cost of ancillary services. I'm very sorry because this presentation will be only an overview of the work. Of course, you can download the thesis to have much more details. And although as the presentation will last only 40 minutes, I may skip some slides in order to be on time. But as Hans said, you will be able to download the presentations, all the slides, so you can read them afterwards. Okay, so there is three main questions about ancillary services. So the first one is about the delivery. Which kind of ancillary services we have to provide in order to have good frequency and good voltages. Then we can wonder how much does it cost to provide ancillary services. And last, with the deregulations of electrical systems, we have to wonder which is the best market design in order to procure ancillary services. So about the delivery of ancillary services, we have to wonder which quality of ancillary services do we need? Do we need fast control, slow control? Then which quantity of each quality? And lastly, where we have to provide these ancillary services in order to have good frequency and voltages. So in order to specify the quality of ancillary services, there are different methods which can go from very basic definitions, very general, very wide, up to very precise methods. So each solutions has some advantages and drawbacks. So there is no perfect specifications. So first definitions that we can have is to specify ancillary services is the one from the UCTE, which divides the ancillary services into three categories: primary, secondary, and tertiary. And these subdivisions is as the functions of the type of controller. So the primary will be independent, so you can't act on it. The secondary will be dependent and centralized. On tertiary, there is no real controller; it's just manual control. The two schemes behind show how does it work with frequency and voltages. So we can see that we have primary, which is close to the generating unit. It's independent controllers. The TSO cannot really act on this controller. The secondary, the TSO will send a signal to the unit directly. And lastly, the tertiary control is just manual. It will give some instruction to the operator to change his point. And the voltage is quite similar. So this functional definitions is very useful in order to compare the ancillary services in various countries. So unfortunately, we can't see it very clearly here, but over there you have so primary secondary and tertiary frequency control reserves as defined before. And in vertical, you have the different systems which use this kind of services, and each systems have different definitions or names for this kind of services, for primary, secondary, and tertiary services. And like this, we can understand um, what we are talking about, because it's quite interesting. For instance, in PJM in United States, they are calling primary reserves something which is tertiary reserve for Europeans. So it can be confusing. So this kind of tables can be very useful to understand what we are talking about. And it worth nothing here that, for instance, Great Britain doesn't use secondary frequency control reserve, um, and Sweden as well. They don't use it neither. Okay, so this functional definitions is very useful to compare what is going on in different countries, but it's not very useful for practical operations. So what the TSO do in general is to specify different characteristics of the control. So here, for instance, we have some characteristic of primary frequency control reserves on the comparison across different systems. As we can see in Europe, um, you can have same recommendations from the UCT, which is the equivalent of NERC in United States. However, in the different countries, the TSOs take different recommendations. So we are talking about the same service, but it's quite different if you look into details. So it can be interesting. So hence, if we want to do some trading in Europe of ancillary services, we have to take care about these small details in order to trade the same product exactly. Okay, so in this thesis, we also proposed another definitions which can be used as well for voltages and frequency control ancillary services. The advantage of these definitions, the main advantage is that it does not rely on the input signal, whereas in most of the recommendations by the TSOs, they are using a typical input signal, which can be quite hard to replicate. Okay, so after defining the quality of ancillary services, we need to define how much ancillary services do we need. Uh, as I said previously, system services are public good because frequency and voltages are shared by everybody. Therefore, only the TSO can redefine the needs, because we need someone which is independent from all the stakeholders. Obviously, the cost-benefit approach should be preferred in order to define the quantity of ancillary services. So the figure on the right will show the total cost for the systems by taking into account the cost of system services. That means we have to provide frequency and voltage control, so it costs money as a function of the quantity of system services which are available. And when you increase the quantity of system services, you decrease the cost of insecurity, and also you decrease the cost of quality and the cost of I forgot the last one of the third one. Sorry. Nevertheless, and at the end, we want to be at the optimal, which is here, to minimize the total cost. But the main problem that it's very difficult to estimate the value of system services, as we say, because there is the triple objective: security, quality, and system utilization. So what we do in practice, we'll define an inelastic demand, and we then will try to minimize the provision costs. It is the approach of the rational buyer. On this topic of balancing cost and benefits, the research is mainly focused on the value of lost load, the vol. Uh, However, the vol does not consider quality on this system utilization. I can say maybe 2 words about system utilizations, because if you change the frequency of the voltages within the network, you will reduce the losses of the systems. So, which is very useful for the TSO if the TSO pays losses, or for the other participants if they pay the losses, like it is done in United States. Okay. So, as I said, usually it is an inelastic demand, and we have built an indicators in order to compare the recommendations across the different systems. And this indicator can be very useful to improve practices. For instance, if Germany see that they have a lot of reserves, more reserves than France, whereas these two systems are quite similar in size, they can wonder whether it's good or not that they have so much reserve. And we can see here that the small systems like in New Zealand have much higher indicators. They need more reserves um, because usually the size of the units is quite constant. So you need a constant amount of reserve, um, a constant amount of reserve for any size of the systems. Okay, and although in the thesis we introduce the concept of instantaneous frequency characteristic, uh, the frequency characteristic takes into account the quality and the quantity of frequency control. The current definitions is given over there on the bottom figure. So for a given frequency deviation, there will deployments of frequency control, of primary frequency control of let's say 100 megawatts. And if you divide these deployments of 100 megawatts by the frequency deviations, you obtain the frequency characteristic, which is given here. So the frequency characteristic is just an average for given frequency deviations. Yeah, for given frequency deviations, but with these definitions, you can't see that if you can't see precisely which units participate in primary frequency control, whereas with the instantaneous frequency characteristic, you can see what is going on. So, for instance, you have a frequency at its target, at its nominal frequency. If the frequency is changing, is dropping, we know here that the generators with a large droop, the droop is a parameter of the primary frequency control, will participate in, and then that although the generators with a small droop will also participate in. And later on, if the frequency is say like I don't know, like 49.9, we'll have some disconnections of loads that will participate in frequency control. The generators with a large droop will also participate in. However, the generators with a small droop won't participate anymore. So these definitions, we can see what is going on. And here, for instance, we can see that we don't have any frequency control anymore, whereas with the current definitions, we we may think that we still have some frequency control, which is not true. Okay, so after defining the quality and the quantity, we need to take into account where we have to put the ancillary services, and the location is very important because of congestions. Okay, then we have to wonder how much does it cost for a provider of ancillary services to provide frequency and voltage control. So the main cost for producer, we won't talk about the consumers or other devices. We have fixed costs, which means investments and other things. We have the reservation cost. We have the utilization cost, which means that you are effectively deploying your control. And we can see that it's very difficult to calculate the cost of ancillary services because they are different. There are a lot of components, and they are interdependent over the timeline. Because what you are doing with your investment will impact later on your capacity and utilization cost later. Okay, in this thesis, what we have done, we have tried to estimate the de-optimization costs. So the method is very easy and standard. So the de-optimization cost is defined as the cost of dispatch in day ahead with reserve minus the cost of dispatch without the constraints of reserve. On the bottom figures, we can see a very simple example to understand what is going on. So initially we have some reserves. So we have to start 4 units in order to provide the energy for load in blue, and in order to provide frequency control in green. If we don't have the frequency control constraint anymore, we can have a cheaper dispatch, and hence the de-optimization cost is simply defined as the cost of this dispatch minus the cost without reserves. We applied this method on the EDF portfolio over 879 days between 2004 and 2007. So the method in practice, so Apogee is the name of the dispatch algorithm used by EDF. So we have the operational constraints with the initial constraints, and then we have the second set, the same set without the constraints for reserve. We make 2 simulations. We obtain 2 different dispatch. We put this dispatch in a database, and then we make some queries on the database with a software called OTES. The main advantage of this method that we are using actual operational data, and we are taking a lot of constraints into account, like dynamics and hydro constraints, thermal. However, we have to keep in mind that there are some limits in our study, but I won't enter into too much details. What you have to remember that what we present here is just a minimum, because we didn't take into account these issues that will increase the actual price or cost of ancillary services. And we'll try in 2009 to next year. We are trying to finish right now further studies in order to improve the knowledge of cost. As a result, that we can see that the cost of frequency control, so primary and secondary frequency control, costs up to 8% of the dispatch cost for EDF. So this figure on the bottom shows the cost, the de-optimization cost over the different years. So here we can see that we have up to 8% of the dispatch cost. So as the dispatch cost is quite important, we need to have efficient procurement in order to decrease the cost, to choose the best producers to provide frequency control. That's the second result, that the optimization cost is very variable. Um, in this figure, we can see like the variation of the de-optimization cost over 2 days. So that means which we look at the de-optimization cost over 1 day, and then the de-optimization cost over the next day, and we look at the variation between these 2 days, and we can see that more than 24% of the time, the cost changed by more than 20% from 1 day to the following. Therefore, a short-term arbitrage is essential for producers in order to to make some arbitrage on their portfolio. A third result, that the optimization cost is not seasonal, so we cannot generalize the result from one period to the other. And I will skip this part because it's too complex to explain it here. Okay, so we have shown that we have talked about the delivery of ancillary services, so the quantity, the quality, and the location. We have shown that frequency control cost money. It costs quite a lot of money, around in average something like 3 or 4% of the dispatch cost. Some arbitrage are necessary, and with all these constraints, we have to define and to design the best market design for ancillary services. And there are 8 issues to address. The first issue, there are 8 issues. What we think that for each different issues or features of the market designers have to explain why they choose one or the other solutions, in order to have a lot of transparency on what is going on. And by doing this process of explaining what is done in each market, we are very certain that it can improve the systems. So the first issue is about the responsible entity for procurement. For us, it's the TSO should be the only responsible entity for procurement, because he knows the value of ancillary services. He has enough incentive to optimize his demand, and we don't have any problems about barriers for new entrants. I mean that ancillary services won't be a constraint for new entrants. However, if the TSO buys the ancillary services to everybody, there is the cost recovery problems, and sometimes the TSO can be both consumers and provider of system services. Remember that ancillary services are very useful for to minimize the losses in the systems, and if the TSO has to buy the losses, is therefore there is a problem of interest between buying and using ancillary services. The second issue is about matching supply and demand, both in the long run and the short run. So what is generally done over the long run is for all the new units, they will have some connecting conditions. So it's written in their connecting contracts that they must have to be able to provide frequency and voltage control in order to be connected to the transmission systems. This solution is not optimal yet, but it works. And over the short run, usually the demand is inelastic, like here, and which can lead to a market failure. So therefore, the inelastic demand should be much better. The third issue is about the procurement method. Um, Here we have this table show comparisons between 5 different procurement methods and the different advantages and drawbacks. And from these tables, we can see that there is no perfect methods. Therefore, it's necessary to use several methods in parallel. And we can see in the world that the main trend for frequency is to have competitions amongst providers. That means that usually we can have a tendering process or a spot market, like in PGM, for instance. Whereas for frequency control, for voltage control, it's more regulated, so that the responsible entity for the procurement will use compulsory provisions, self-procurements, or bilateral contracts, because it will reduce risks. The fourth issue is about the structures of remunerations. How do you pay the ancillary services provider for the service that they are giving to the system? So there are different components that can be used, like a fixed component, which is paid all over the year, and availability component, for instance, in euro per megawatt per hour, and utilization component, which will be, for instance, in euro per megawatt hour, and the opportunity cost and the utilization frequency. But usually, the two main components are availability and utilizations. And as we can see, they are used in numerous countries. The fifth issue is about market clearing. And there are a lot of different issues related to these questions. First is about the structures. Shall we use a pool, a centralized market, like for instance in PGM, or a decentralized market, an exchange, like in Europe? That's the first questions. Then about the bidding, which kind of auctions shall we need? How can we score the different offers? Because the scoring can be very difficult if there are a lot of components for remunerations for uh, to pay the providers. If there are too much components, it can be very difficult to choose the best. What is the best, to have an availability component very high and a low utilization cost, or the reverse? It can be difficult to choose. Then the time coordinations, especially the coordinations between the other markets through the transmission markets and the markets of energy. Um, the best will be a common clearing, but it can be very difficult in decentralized structures like in Europe. Then there is a debate about the settlements. Shall we pay them in a zonal way or nodal way? And lastly, the clearing frequency. How often shall we have a market? Every month, every hour, every day, every 3 years? This can be hard to answer. The sixth questions is about price cap. We think that price cap should be avoided because in case of offer cap, there is a problem of revenue. The supply doesn't get enough revenue from this market, so they don't have any incentive to invest or to go into the market. On the other side, the purchase cap shall not be used as well, because here the demand curve does not reflect the actual value of ancillary services. Therefore, it should be another curve rather than this very simple curve that should be used. Then we need to give enough incentives so all the participants to the market. A first incentive is through the cost allocations of ancillary services. We think that the best is to divide the different components of ancillary services as a functions of the kind of user it is. curator pays can be quite interesting. Then there is the questions about data transparency and other issues of penalties and rewards. And in order to help us to assess what is going on, we can use metrics. And here the metrics which is shown is the cost of ancillary services. So for instance, in Spain, the secondary frequency control is very cost a lot of money for the TSO. Okay, as conclusions, so this thesis tried to improve the state of knowledge first about the needs of system services. So we talk about the quality, quantity, and locations. The thesis surveys various systems and proposed how to better specify the needs for system services. Then about the cost of ancillary services, the thesis um, apply the de-optimization cost methods for EDF on the EDF portfolio. And then about the market design, we have different issues. These issues have been identified in the thesis. Then we try to describe them and to analyze the different features. We have given some examples and we have given some ways of improvement. Lastly, for future work, we think that it's quite important to assess regularly the systems in order to improve the systems in real time. Then there's the big questions about um, drawing the limits between negotiables and non-negotiable products. For instance, we can wonder why stability is not remunerated. Then we need to deepen the understanding of costs, of ancillary services costs, and that's one of the axes that we are working on at EDF. And we have also to improve the market design to give more long-term incentive, have a better demand elasticity, better allocation of costs, better data transmissions. There are plenty of things that we can do in different markets, and we have to work on these things. Also, we have to facilitate the exchanges between areas. And lastly, we have to develop alternative ancillary services supplier, especially loads through the demand side management and through wind power. At the end, I give you some references for further reading, and I would like to thank my supervisors, Daniel Kirchen for this thesis, and Bruno Pesta for some slides that he gave me for these presentations. Thank you very much for your attention.